There is something knitting does to a busy mind that almost nothing else can. It doesn't silence the mind exactly, but it slows it down, and it gives your hands something to do while the rest of you finds its way back to peace and quiet. In this video, I want to share the knitting patterns that I reach for when I need exactly that. There are some patterns that you could knit while sitting in the dark, a couple others that are just a little bit more engaging there so that your hands have something to hold on to, and a few more patterns where you can really focus on the feel of the yarn in your hands. There are going to be 14 different patterns across 3 different categories, and I also want to share a few things along the way about what I've learned about what it actually means to knit for relaxation. So let's get started. Total autopilot. The first category are the kind of patterns that I like to call total autopilot, where you can simply start knitting and then just keep going. There is hardly any counting involved, not really a lot of pattern reading, and you can really focus on just the rhythm of the stitches. So these are exactly the types of projects that I like to reach for when my mind is the fullest, where I just want to keep my hands busy while allowing my mind to, settle and breathe. And the very first pattern that I would like to talk about is the Sorgenfri blanket by Guri Pagerson. Sorgenfri is a Scandinavian word and it means free from worry, which I think embodies exactly the type of knitting we are looking for when we want to knit something mindless. I absolutely love the pattern on this blanket. It reminds me a lot about my favorite sweater, which is the sweater number 28 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And as you can see here, and it is a very similar pattern on the blanket, you have these alternating sections of garter stitch and ribbing, which makes it just engaging enough to be interesting and at the same time super easy and relaxing. The Sorgenfri blanket is written for 5 different gauges, so you can really choose any yarn you like and also knit it as big or as small if you would like it to be. And if you would like to choose something even simpler and a free version, I can recommend the Super Easy Baby Blanket by Pearl Soho. This is just garter stitch, so you are knitting back and forth all the time. It requires absolutely zero brain power, and sometimes this is exactly the point, right? There are different versions of this pattern available. There is one for DK weight and another one for worsted and sport weight yarn. And again, you can make the blanket as big or as small as you like. Next up, let's talk about the Musselburgh hat by Isolde Teague, and this is a very popular hat pattern that many people have made, and many people have knitted several versions of it because it is just such a wonderful and mindless knit. So there are 2 parts of this pattern where you have to be a bit more mindful and pay a bit more attention, and this is the cast on and the bind off, because let me show you, I've made the Musselburgh myself. It is basically an all over stockinette hat, and you have of course the crown that is the cast on, and because you are knitting a very long tube, you also have another crown at the end of your knitting project. But as you can see, once you have cast it on and increased and for the full circumference you basically knit. Since it's a very long tube, and in the end, let's see if I can quickly do it on camera. In the end, you simply, no, I can't. In the end, you simply fold the hat in on itself and get this beautiful hat. You might be able to see that mine has some pills, but that's only because I wore it so much last winter. I absolutely love this hat. I would like to make it again, and it's just absolutely beautiful. By the way, the yarn that I used for mine is a very soft yarn. This is a cashmere from Nakyang Yarn, which was very kindly gifted to me, and I absolutely love to wear this hat. So before I show you the next 2 patterns in this category, let's do a quick breathing exercise, because this is something that helps me so much on these days that are just extra challenging. The exercise is called Settling a Fluttering Mind, and you basically inhale for 3 seconds, then you hold your breath for 3 seconds, and then you exhale. Let's do it together now. So I hope that helped a little, and let's move on to the next pattern now. The next pattern I would like to share with you is the Fleur Shawl by Espace Tricot, which is a free pattern, and I have made this twice myself. So this is my first version with yarn that I hand dyed myself using cochineal, and I made an almost identical second version for my daughter because she loved my shawl so much. So this is an all-over garter stitch shawl, so you are knitting back and forth all the time. And it is in the pattern written to be a triangular shape. But my version, as you might be able to tell, has a crescent shape, so it does not have the triangle here, and that is because I did some modifications inspired by Jackie from the Knitting a Good Yarn podcast. She made the Fleur shawl, and I think she followed some modifications. Either she made those up herself or she followed them from a Ravelry project page that she has found. I'm not sure at the moment, but I'm going to link it down for you in the description box along with everything else that I'm mentioning in this video. But needless to say, I chose the crescent shape shawl because I just prefer that. And I think whatever shape you choose, the Fleur is a perfect mindless project since it's all over garter stitch. The only thing you have to pay a bit more attention to are these bobbles that are placed on every couple of rows of the shawl. But I think if you are really not in the headspace for anything complicated, you could easily just leave the bobbles out and just make an all-over garter stitch shawl. But another tip that I also learned from Jackie that I wanted to share with you because I think it's just such a beautiful idea. Jackie shared that whenever she made a bobble, she also made a wish. So she pretty much infused the shawl with positive thoughts, and I think this is such a great idea. And then there are dishcloths. So I know that dishcloths do not sound very glamorous, but when I talked about the copycat dishcloth by Michelle Krause in a previous video, so many of you shared with me that dishcloths are your go-to mindless project, and I can completely understand why. They are small, they are portable, they are quick to finish, and there is something just deeply satisfying about a project you can complete in one evening. And like I said, the copycat dishcloth by Michelle Krause is one of my favorite versions, and it is available for free. It is knitted in garter stitch and features 2 stockinette bands. And if you would like another option, there's also the dishcloth recipe by Robin Wiest. That is a simple corner to corner garter stitch pattern, and it's also free on Ravelry and just or maybe even more meditative. So while I've been putting this video together, I have been thinking about the periods of my life where I needed this type of knitting the most. The times in my life that were just a bit too much and so challenging that I was just looking for something to keep my hands busy and allow my mind to just settle down, you know. So in 2021, my husband and I purchased a house that is 110 years old, and it is the house I am sitting in right now, and we started to completely renovate it. And while this might sound like a beautiful dream and very romantic, it definitely was in many ways, but it was also so challenging in many other ways. Because one of the reasons for that is that our house is, since it's so old, it is under monumental protection, and that means that everything that concerns the facade of the house and also other parts of it has to be permitted first before we could start doing any work on it. And this was all happening during COVID, where material prices had just gone through the roof and workers were very hard to get. So I remember laying awake at night, on many nights, my mind just racing, thinking about budgets, timelines, permits, and nothing was going according to plan, and everything just seemed out of my control. So during that time, knitting became even more important to me. There were basically two things that carried me through this challenging phase of life, and that was knitting, and the other one was Headspace. So I have been using Headspace, can you see that? Since 2017, and I am honestly so proud to say that they are very kindly sponsoring this video. I have recommended them to so many of my friends in the past. So what I started doing during the restoration phase was opening Headspace as part of my morning routine and doing a guided meditation, like a course specifically for when you feel stressed. And on the nights that I couldn't sleep, I would put a sleep cast on, and it really helped me to soothe my restless mind at night. So even after just a couple of minutes of using Headspace, I could already feel more at ease. And it's not like I completely stopped being stressed, but it helped me be able to deal with the situation much, much better. And just 5 minutes a day of using Headspace has been shown to reduce stress. And to be completely honest, during the most challenging days of our renovation phase, this daily meditation practice was truly the highlight of my day. So if you would like to try Headspace for yourself, they are offering you a 60-day free trial if you use my link in the description box or scan the QR code on the screen. And that is 2 full months of trying it out for free compared to the standard 14-day trial that you would otherwise get. Thank you so much, Headspace, for sponsoring this video. And let's move on to category 2 now, which is called Gentle Focus. Now the second category of patterns is a little bit different. They are just a tad more involved, so nothing overly complicated, but maybe some easy counting, maybe some more focus that is required of you in certain areas of the pattern, just enough to keep your mind occupied and, not being able to think about too much else. And personally, I often find that these projects can be the most meditative because it just gives your mind something to focus on. The first pattern or pattern series I would like to talk about is Sea Glass by Wool and Pine. And I have actually made the kids version, so the Sea Glass Mini myself. I have made one for my older daughter and one for my younger daughter. And as you can see, this is an all over 1x1 colorwork pattern. What I like so much about the Sea Glass patterns is that they are so beautiful, but they are also designed to be using up leftovers. So I think this is another aspect of the pattern that I like so much, because you create something truly unique to yourself if you do decide to use leftovers. And if you do not want to commit to a full garment, there's also a hat, mitten and cowl pattern available. Next up, let's talk about the Tulsa Tee by Rebecca Clow. This is a super popular pattern, and I think for good reason. It is a top-down simple raglan tee, and once you have set up the raglan increases, you can simply just settle down into it and relax. The pattern includes instructions for both a DK and a fingering weight sweater, long and short sleeves, and also optional bust shaping. And it's also highly customizable, which you can see in the sample pictures. You can knit it in just one color, you can do stripes, you can embroider it, or you can add this beautiful eyelet pattern. The next pattern I would like to talk about is one that holds a very special place in my heart, and it is the Mosaic pattern by Pearl Soho, which is a free blanket pattern. And I made this exact blanket for my first niece when she was born in 2019. What I really like about mosaic stitch in general is that it looks so elaborate and much more complicated than it actually is, because unlike colorwork that we just talked about with the Sea Glass Mini, with mosaic knitting you are only ever knitting with one color at a time, and you are slipping stitches, so that creates this two-color effect. And I think this is like a perfect way of creating something beautiful and involved looking without having to deal with two different or even more different colorways at a time. And if you would prefer to try the mosaic stitch in a garment rather than a blanket, there are so many beautiful sweater and cardigan options on Ravelry. Definitely worth a search if that feels more like you. And then there are socks, of course, and the pattern I chose to show you here is one of my own designs. It is called the Astrid socks, and they are named after my mom because I designed and knitted this pair of socks that you can see on the screen for her birthday, and I also naturally dyed the yarn myself. So yeah, that is where the name comes from. And the sock itself is a rather simple pattern. You only have to pay a bit more attention to the small colorwork portion on the leg of the socks. They are knitted cuff down and also feature a heel flap and gusset. So of course, when it comes to socks, there are always those parts where you have to be a bit more mindful, usually the cast on maybe, then the heel turn and the toe. But besides that, it is a wonderful and mindless project. And I personally really like to knit socks when I just want to keep my hands busy and not overly overthink the pattern. Socks are also wonderful travel knitting. They are wonderful evening knitting and just wonderful in general, I think, when you just want to knit a couple rounds without thinking too much. Slow and sensory. Let's move on to the third category, and these patterns are just a bit different because I wanted to show you a couple of ideas where the yarn becomes just as important as the pattern, where you are really looking for this tactile, soothing, grounding experience. The first pattern I would like to talk about is the Sunday cardigan by Petite Knit, and I have made this pattern myself, but in a different yarn. So that is my version here, and I in general really like to recommend this pattern because it is so easy and so wearable. I've made my version I think in 2020 and I've worn it countless times. I absolutely love this pattern. And the yarn that I would particularly recommend for you to use with the pattern is Snevnuk by Kamarosa, which is a Danish yarn brand, and I absolutely adore this yarn. It is a blown yarn and it consists of this cotton tube, and then you have merino and alpaca blown into it, and it is just the softest, most luxurious feeling airy yarn you can imagine. I adore it. I actually use the pink version. I think it's called like Merc Rosa maybe. I'm going to put it in the description box for you to make a cardigan with, and I adore this yarn. I definitely highly recommend that you give it a try, whether you decide to knit the Sunday cardigan or not. And it also comes in a number of very beautiful heathered colorways. And if a cardigan feels like too much of a commitment for you, I would recommend the following pattern. And this is called the Erasier by Holst Knit. And this is a beautiful shawl that I think would look absolutely stunning in the Snevnuk by Kamarosa. It is a large triangular shawl with those simple elegant lines that are done in double knitting, and it's knitted from tip to tip. And I think it looks just so cozy and timeless. And in Snevnuk, I think this would be absolutely dreamy. It's the kind of thing you drape around your shoulders on a quiet morning and feel immediately more settled. One more pattern that I've made myself and that I would like to share with you is the Porcelain Damask Sweater by Lena Holme Samsø, and this is my version here. This is one of my most worn makes, and I also really loved the knitting experience. So the pattern is designed to be knitted with one strand of a fingering weight merino yarn held together with a strand of a lace weight silk mohair, and that is what I did as well. But you could also just as easily, or maybe even easier, use a DK weight yarn to knit this beautiful sweater. And what I would really encourage you to focus on if you want this particularly sensory experience is to choose a yarn that you are very excited about, that you love the feel of, and that you are just looking forward to just holding in your hands and working with it every evening or whenever you usually knit. The Porcelain Damask Sweater is knitted from the top down and has a drop shoulder construction, and it also features these lovely pattern sections that are simply created by Knits and Pearls, which means they are easy to knit but also very engaging. And if you're looking for a bit more of a simpler pattern, I would like to recommend the Drop in Dream Sweater by Giulia Piero. Giulia Piero is a designer I have not tried myself yet, but she has been recommended to me so many times in the comments because her patterns apparently are very accessible, especially for beginner knitters, and are beautifully written. The Drop in Dream Sweater calls for an Aran weight yarn, which I love for this category because there's something particularly grounding about working with a thicker yarn. The stitches are bigger, the progress is faster, of course, and the weight of it in your hands is just deeply satisfying. And Julia also has a full video tutorial alongside the pattern, so you are going to have a wonderful company for a slow and sensory knit. I really hope that through watching this video you are already feeling more relaxed and grounded, and there is one more mindful exercise that I would like to share with you.
It's late. Your body is tired, but your mind didn't get the memo. Maybe it's replaying today or planning for tomorrow. And that's just what the thinking mind does. It believes that if it keeps going, it can create control or certainty. But for right now, you don't have to fix anything. You don't have to solve anything. This is an opportunity for you to set it all down.
I hope that felt like a small exhale. So knitting is one of the few things that I can think of that asks you to be in two places at once. You need to be present enough to keep your hands moving and doing the right thing, and you need to be free enough to be able to let your mind wander. And I think that's not a small thing, because in a world that is so good at keeping us busy and not very good at helping us rest, being able to have a creative task that also grounds you is something so valuable, I think. And if you enjoyed this video, I think you're also going to like this one. And don't forget, if you would like to try out Headspace, they are offering you 60 days to give them a try for free and see for yourself. Until next time, take care. Bye.